and welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your weekly dose of the top pro-life news and issues, all from a Catholic perspective. I am your host, Catherine Hadro, in our Washington, D.C. studio. Thank you for joining us. In this week's show, a former Planned Parenthood Employee of the Year wins a $3 million case against the abortion giant. She joins us with details. A Netflix series aimed at teens showcases abortion. We speak out. And this.
I just needed someone to be there and say, I'm going to stand beside you on this.
The star of the Unplanned movie announces a new initiative to help unplanned mothers. But first, our top story, the Department of Health and Human Services has put a major university medical center on notice after a Catholic nurse claims she was forced to participate in an abortion against her conscience. The Office for Civil Rights at HHS issued a notice of violation letter last week to the University of Vermont Medical Center after an investigation found a nurse was forced to assist in an elective abortion in 2017. Even though she had made clear to her employer she did not want to. HHS claims this violates federal law and says when the department began investigating this case, it began hearing reports of other medical professionals also scheduled to participate in abortions against their objections. HHS has given the University of Vermont Medical Center, which receives federal dollars, 30 days to change its policies. A spokesperson for the medical center denied the claims and told us in part, quote, "We do not discriminate against any employees for exercising their rights to opt out of procedures to which they object." Joining us now from Nashville, Tennessee is Jordan Sekulow, the executive director of the American Center for Law and Justice, the legal firm representing the nurse in this case. Jordan, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for covering this story.
Absolutely. First off, Jordan, how had your client expressed to the University of Vermont Medical Center that she was opposed to participating in abortion?
So they kept a list of people at the hospital, and this is supposed to be normal practice across the country since the law was passed in 1973, the same year the Supreme Court decided Roe versus Wade. A liberal U.S. senator, Senator Church, introduced what has been known as the Church Amendment or Church Rule. And it has nothing to do with being, faithful, or that just happened to be his last name. But it is what we now call the Conscience Clause. And what that means is that if you are, in this case, a medical provider, so a doctor, a nurse, another kind of medical professional who would be part of a procedure, you can decide not to participate in those procedures which would violate your conscience. And then the hospital keeps a list of those people who have decided they opt out of procedures because of conscience objections. So in this case, this nurse was on this list. And in 2017, she is pulled into a procedure. She thinks that the procedure is actually an unfortunate situation where there's been a miscarriage and they've got to remove the child who has died. The doctor then turns to her and says, "Don't hate me." And she learns that this is an elective abortion, that the hospital just that year had begun doing, this was at University of Vermont Medical Center, had begun doing what they call elective abortions, so not anything involved with medical necessity. And so she did not know what she was going to be participating in until literally she was already in her scrubs, having to make that decision, the pressure, do I do this, the job, and of course this caused a lot of distress. Now, the issue has been in the past, okay, so her conscience rights were violated. The law that protects her since 1973 has been violated by this university. What do you do? Well, what we did was we filed a complaint with HHS, and never before, this is interesting, not since 1973 when HHS, that's Health and Human Services, and Secretary Azar, Alex Azar, who is the cabinet secretary who is in charge of HHS now, since they've had this power to enforce the Conscience Clause for those who are receiving federal funding, like this University of Vermont Medical Center, have never used it. Well, the Trump administration did. For the first time, an administration responded to our complaint, did a one-year investigation of the University of Vermont Medical Center, found that not only was our client's conscience rights and thus the federal law violated, but so were 4 other additional nurses and medical professionals. And it's now HHS has given the hospital 30 days to change their policies, or they will not be eligible for federal funding.
And Jordan,
that would be about, yeah.
I want to speak about this specific case. As your client understood it, what was the medical center's policy if she had refused to participate in this abortion?
So she didn't think that she would be asked in the first place. That's why she was caught off guard when she entered the procedure and the doctor turned to her and said, "Don't hate me." I mean, that's in the official HHS report. So she was surprised that she was even put in that situation to begin with. But of course, because this hospital had now brought on the elective abortion procedure, she was concerned about that there could be retribution. If she had walked out of that procedure and not followed through with it, that she would have lost her job and ultimately her career in nursing. Interesting note, the head of the board of trustees for this hospital, when they decided that elective abortions would now be performed at University of Vermont Medical Center, is in 2017, the new board chair happened to be the former director of Planned Parenthood for New England. So, I mean, a regional director for the #1 abortion provider in the country. So this nurse was very concerned about the specific retribution, but she had a government now willing to do something about this, enforce this law. We've now heard from many more medical professionals from across the country who now know that they have a administration who will stand up for them, make sure that their wrongs are righted, and that these universities don't get away with this and hospitals don't get away with this in the future.
And I understand your client is Catholic. How much did her faith influence her opposition to abortion?
Well, it's part of the conscience clause. Your faith can absolutely be a reason that you claim that it violates your conscience to perform certain procedures. And the procedures are actually listed out. Even University of Vermont Medical Center had what procedures the conscience clause protections covered. And it's not just abortion, there are other procedures as well for other religious groups. So in this nurse's case, of course, her Catholic faith informed her conscience. I think it's directly correlated with her faith. That is what the conscience clause protections are there for. And I'm glad they're now being enforced when there's a violation. And unfortunately, we're learning, as is often the case with these cases, there are a lot of violations. People just don't speak up because they don't want to lose their jobs. What do you see as the next steps for your client? So our client has kind of, I think, started a wave effect. So we just at this hospital center, we've identified 4 additional clients. So there's be 4 more additional investigations by Health and Human Services. So I believe that she's kind of on the forefront. And as I said, because you can do these confidentially, so you don't have to disclose who the individuals are when you file the complaint with HHS. HHS can do the investigation and really punish the medical center. That's good for our clients. We are hearing from many more. We said, you know what, we need to put out a clarion call and see who else this is happening to and let them know there's something they can do about it now, that there's an administration willing to enforce the existing laws. And that's what we're seeing is that this nurse has really, this Catholic nurse with this objection who had this horrible situation happen to her where she was forced into performing an abortion procedure or assisting in the abortion procedure. What the school statement is absurd. They have so far, we've gotten no indication that they have complied with HHS. They may absolutely lose their federal funding. We'll see what they decide to do ultimately. This should never happen again. No religious objector should ever be forced to be part of performing an abortion if they have a conscience objection to that. It's fundamental to our constitutional law. It's fundamental to American principles of religious liberty and freedom. And it's actually in our U.S. federal code. Statute says so. Now we have an administration who's given it some teeth.
Jordan Sekulow, Executive Director of the American Center for Law and Justice, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And joining us here in our D.C. studio for pro-life analysis is Autumn Christensen, the Policy Director for the Susan B. Anthony List. Autumn, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. First off, what is your reaction to this case? Did it surprise you?
Well, you know, it's always shocking to hear a story of somebody being forced to participate in the brutal act of abortion. Unfortunately, it's becoming less and less surprising as we hear more and more of these cases. I think of Kathy DiCarlo, another nurse who several years ago came forward after she was forced to participate in an abortion and put the pieces together of the baby to make sure that the abortion was complete, or the two nurses who tried to enroll in a program at Vanderbilt and were told, if you don't want to participate in abortion, you're not welcome in this program. There are so many cases of people being pushed out of the medical field or forced to violate their conscience over the issue of abortion. So this is truly a heartbreaking case, unfortunately in a larger trend.
Autumn, what should our viewers know about the specific HHS department that caught this case?
Yes, the Office of Civil Rights is an important division within the Department of Health and Human Services. One of the things that the Trump administration has done is actually prioritize the issue of conscience rights. There are a number of long-standing laws out there that are intended to protect the rights of individuals who don't want to be involved in abortion, and yet they're being forced to participate and they don't know where to turn. And so under this administration, they have created a division for religious freedom and conscience so that they can take these cases, look at them closely, and finally enforce the law.
And why is religious freedom an issue that pro-lifers should be vigilantly watching and paying attention to?
You know, nobody should be forced to participate in abortion. Abortion is a brutal, brutal act. And yet, when we are in a healthcare crisis where we need more and more healthcare providers, and yet instead what we find is that people who get into providing care because they want to help people, because they want to be life-giving, they're finding themselves in circumstances where they're being told you have to participate in taking life in order to carry out your career. That's not something that we should be able to stand for, certainly as pro-lifers, but really just as Americans.
Finally, Autumn, as Congress prepares to come back to D.C., what do you want to see from the lawmakers to prevent further cases like this?
Yes, well, we have long supported the Conscience Protection Act, which was authored by Congressman Dr. Andy Harris from Maryland. We continue to urge co-sponsorship and passage of that important piece of legislation. As Jordan Sekulow said in your earlier clip, these laws have been in the books for a long, long time, but no other administration has enforced them thoroughly. The Conscience Protection Act would ensure that these laws are enforceable by providing legal recourse for victims of discrimination.
Thank you, Autumn Christensen, Policy Director for the Susan B. Anthony List. Thank you for bringing the great insight you always do.
Thank you.
As we've reported, the Department of Health and Human Services has put a major university medical center on notice after a Catholic nurse claims she was forced to participate in an abortion against her conscience. This case against the University of Vermont Medical Center is specifically being handled by the Office for Civil Rights in HHS, an office newly created during President Trump's administration. HHS has given the medical center 30 days to comply. It is absolutely crucial to protect the conscience rights of healthcare workers. And that brings us to this week's call to action. Go to ProLifeWeekly.com to thank the Office for Civil Rights at HHS for taking action to protect the conscience rights of healthcare workers. When you get to our website, ProLifeWeekly.com, you will be able to type in your information and send a message directly to this HHS office, thanking them for this unprecedented life-affirming action. Any healthcare worker who has an objection to abortion or other life-ending procedures should not be forced to participate. Our conscience rights cannot be touched and must be protected. Let us make sure HHS knows this pro-life action is supported by the pro-life movement. You can send your thank you message by going to ProLifeWeekly.com. Turning now to our next segment, a former Planned Parenthood Employee of the Year is awarded $3 million after successfully suing the abortion giant. An Arizona court ruled last month former Planned Parenthood Director Mayra Rodriguez was wrongfully terminated after working at the abortion business for 17 years. Rodriguez says she was unfairly dismissed after she raised ethical and legal breaches at Planned Parenthood, ranging from falsification of patient records to failure to report a minor with an adult sexual partner. Rodriguez directed 3 different clinics and was even named Employee of the Year in 2016, the year before she was fired and then filed suit. Mayra Rodriguez joins us now from Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
First off, Mayra, how are you feeling now that you officially won your case in court?
Well, there's a sense of relief. It's been 2 years. We started this Team Casey, took my case 2 years ago. He believed in me, trusted that I was telling the truth, and took my case 2 years ago. And then we made it to a trial. And now that, you know, the sense of when 10 people agree with you that you're telling the truth, I can't explain how it feels.
Can you share with us what were some of the more egregious breaches you witnessed at Planned Parenthood?
Well, I remember the one that I said that's it is the last drop. It was the mischarting information from the doctor. So there was a specific doctor, you know, that what happened in the room, it's not what he kept charting on his chart. And that was one, there was a specific case, I think you have read about it on the newspaper, or in my case, it's in my lawsuit, about a patient that was there for an abortion and ended up having incomplete abortion and IUD inserted. Nothing like that was ever charted, you know, so that was one of the things that was outrageous to me, you know, because the patient deserved to know what happened to her in the room.
When you made Planned Parenthood aware of your concerns, how did they respond to your complaints?
Well, there was usually, don't worry about it, just do your job. You know, there was something like, you know, if you keep complaining about it, other people will tell me, Mayra, people get fired from talking like that. But, you know, I couldn't stay quiet. I was very vocal when I saw things going wrong, and I was known for that. You know, if I see something going wrong, I will say it.
Why then did Planned Parenthood claim that they fired you?
Well, on the year of 2017, we closed down the clinic that I had been managing for over 10 years, which was the Northeast Phoenix facility, due to the title, the expectation about not having title programs anymore. So I was packing up that clinic. I was away from the Glendale location, which is the biggest abortion clinic in Arizona, where I had just started to manage in November of 2016. And I was gone the entire week in September. And when I came back for a meeting, I was told there were narcotics on my desk. And that was the reason they fired me.
So to clarify, Mayra, you argue that these narcotics were planted on your desk.
I argued that I was not the one who put the narcotics on my desk, and that there were other motives for being fired.
Mayra, Planned Parenthood markets itself as being pro-immigrant rights. As an immigrant yourself, is that true? What was your experience?
Mm-hmm. Well, my experience as an immigrant was that at the moment that they found out I was an undocumented person working for them, I was attacked by that during the trial. You know, that was the reason they called me a liar, because if I was an undocumented person and working there, therefore I was a liar.
Mayra, has this entire experience of being fired and going to court changed your perception of Planned Parenthood's business? And if so, how?
Well, they didn't care much for me. You know, they didn't care much for me as an immigrant. They didn't care much for me as a woman. You know, so, and obviously, I didn't do anything wrong when they fired me. You know, because it's not for being undocumented they fired me. That was not the reason why they fired me. So I didn't do anything wrong, you know, for them to fire me. I was doing my job. I was telling what was wrong at my clinic. You know, so I lost my job, and then it took a lot of courage to do this, because obviously in my situation, I was afraid to come forward, you know, but I knew I had to do it because I want other people to be able to come forward. You know, if they see something wrong, then they should come up and say it.
Mayra Rodriguez, thank you for your courage and sharing your testimony and for taking the time to be with us.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
We will air part 2 of our interview with Mayra Rodriguez next week. She tells us what she thinks we should know about Planned Parenthood's business. When we come back,
I really needed someone to just look at me and say, I'm here for you. I have your back. I'm going to stand by you the entire way.
How the star of the movie Unplanned is helping moms facing unplanned pregnancies. Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm your host, Catherine Hadro. A Netflix show that has been criticized for advancing suicide is now promoting abortion. That is this week's Speak Out segment.
Killing is a sin, but it's not too late. This is the moment where you decide the fate of two souls. Choose wisely or you'll regret this day until you die.
That's enough, back off.
Just take this.
An episode in the recently released third season of the Netflix show 13 Reasons Why depicts an abortion scene and pro-lifers harassing the young woman as she enters an abortion facility. One pro-lifer is depicted as deceiving the young woman by wearing a vest with clinic escort written on it, who then shoves a bloody model of an unborn baby into her hands. 13 Reasons Why is a drama based on a book of the same name. It centers around the suicide of a teenage girl. 13 Reasons Why not only depicts the culture of death, but the show seems to actually revel in it. Just earlier this year, Netflix had to edit the first season's graphic suicide scene after years of criticism from suicide prevention experts. But as if glamorizing suicide was not enough, the show has now turned to promoting abortion and to dishonestly portraying the pro-life movement. This series targets a teen audience and streams on Netflix, so it's easily accessible for young viewers. Please make sure the young people in your life know they can turn to you for help and not to a TV show if they are overcoming any challenge. I don't need 13 Reasons Why to not watch this show, just this one. Remember, there is something you can do to counter today's culture of death. Follow this week's call to action. Go to prolifeweekly.com to thank the Office for Civil Rights at HHS for taking action to protect the conscience rights of healthcare workers. From the Unplanned movie to now supporting unplanned mothers, one actress teams up with a major pro-life group as we share in this week's Pro-Life Focus.
And I just remember calling out to God during that time and saying, God, what is my purpose here? I don't understand. I don't understand what I'm doing here.
It was on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly earlier this year. Unplanned's lead actress Ashley Bratcher opened up for the first time in a television interview about her own unplanned pregnancy before she was married to her now husband.
I remember one of the first responses I got when I told someone I was pregnant was, wow, really? You're going to throw away your career?
But 9 years since her son was born, Bratcher today has a thriving career, as evident in her recent role on the big screen, portraying pro-life leader Abby Johnson in the film Unplanned, a movie that was a box office success, ranking in at number 5 opening weekend.
What was really interesting about this role is I became this figure that people felt like they could be vulnerable with. I was receiving a ton of personal messages, a couple from young girls who were in college or were hoping to go to college. One girl in particular who was a junior going into her senior year of college who had found out she was pregnant. And one of the first things she said to me was, I'm going to have to give up school. I'm not going to be able to finish. I don't know how I'm going to have enough money to do this. I can't raise a baby. And I just said to her, yes, you can. I remember getting off the phone with her and looking at my husband and saying, this is crazy. This is crazy. So many people, so many girls think that they can't finish school, that they can't go to school and pursue their degrees if they have a child. And this is just insane. And how do we solve this problem? Well, we provide resources.
With that, Bratcher approached a pro-life group packed with resources. She contacted Heartbeat International, a pregnancy help network with 27,000 locations around 62 different countries, to together create the Unplanned Movie Scholarship. As the group's president tells us, they are more than happy to be a part of it.
Well, the Unplanned Movie Scholarship was a great idea that actually came from Ashley Bratcher, who, as you know, plays Abby in the movie Unplanned. And in her heart, she really wanted to leave a legacy for the movie, and that's why we were excited to work with her to really translate that passion for those that are facing the very issues that are dealt with in the Unplanned movie. And so it seems particularly powerful and poignant to really leverage the movie and the messages of the movie to actually help women who are in that situation. We know of many that have reached out for help because of seeing the movie, and now through the Unplanned Movie Scholarship, some of those will be potentially available to receive some help towards education.
The Unplanned Movie Scholarship will provide a $5,000 annual scholarship for mothers facing unplanned pregnancies who want to further their education. This life-affirming initiative may be one way to bring down the abortion rate, because according to statistics from the pro-abortion research group, the Guttmacher Institute, 60% of U.S. abortions are obtained by women in their 20s and 12% by teenagers.
There's often this reality that education is part of the decision-making in an unplanned pregnancy, and sometimes it's actually the thing that is the tipping point, whether a woman facing that choice really makes a decision to choose life for her child.
What kind of difference does it make, Ashley, to have some financial assistance to pursue and further your education?
Oh my gosh. I mean, when you're a young mother and you're thinking about, okay, how am I going to pay my bills? Am I going to be able to buy formula this week? Or am I going to be able to buy diapers? Or am I going to be able to pay my light bills? To know that you have the peace of mind where going to school is not something you have to worry about, is not a financial burden. And even with some of these funds potentially providing a stipend for these women to do other things with the money, it's just peace of mind, where you can say, I can focus on my education and giving myself and my child a better life without thinking that it's this financial burden.
Since the scholarship was just announced in mid-August, Heartbeat International is still raising funds towards the first goal. But the group aims to open up scholarship applications at the beginning of 2020. As other unexpected mothers start reaching their goals because of this scholarship, Bratcher says she doesn't want to be the focus or get the credit. Her hope is that it's all part of the Unplanned movie's legacy of giving.
I just needed someone to be there and say, I'm going to stand beside you on this. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery to look at the possibility of someone telling you that you're going to have to give up your dreams, that you're going to have to sacrifice so much. So in turn, I say to pro-lifers, don't let that be the voice that's heard. Be the voice that says you can.
To find out more and even to donate to the Unplanned Movie Scholarship, be sure to go to unplannedmoviescholarship.com. That does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Until next time, be sure to reach us at prolifeweekly@ewtn.com or connect with us on social media. Just search for EWTN Pro-Life on all the major platforms. And remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.